Today's story begins in a small town called Candido Godoy, located in the state of Rio Grande do Sul in southern Brazil. At first glance, this place may seem like just another ordinary town. But once you set foot there, you'll discover a fascinating global phenomenon. The unusually high number of twins, with a population of fewer than 7,000 people, most of whom are descendants of Germans. The town has drawn significant attention. After World War II ended, settlers crossed the ocean to live here. Statistics show that the twin birth rate in Candido Godoy has reached an astonishing 20%, meaning that out of every 5 pregnant women, 1 gives birth to twins, while the global average is only about 1 in 89. This anomaly quickly attracted the interest of experts and scholars. People began actively searching for explanations, from the town's genetic background and living environment to its water source. But no definitive answer has yet been found at this point. Argentine historian Jorge Camarasa proposed a theory suggesting that the town of twins phenomenon might be linked to anthropological experiments conducted by Nazi SS Dr. Joseph Mengele, infamously known as the Angel of Death. According to Camarasa, after World War II, the notorious Dr. Mengele fled to Brazil and allegedly conducted human experiments in this small town for many years, with the aim of creating a superior human race for the Nazis. So what really happened in the past? Today, let's talk about the most insane reproduction experiment in history. In 1933, Hitler came to power and became the head of Germany, marking the beginning of World War II. From 1939 to 1941, Germany quickly occupied 14 European countries. At that point, Hitler's ambitions had grown immensely. He even sought world domination. In 1935, Heinrich Himmler, the second most powerful figure in the Nazi Party and head of the SS, Schutzstaffel, launched a project called Lebensborn, Fountain of Life, with the goal of cultivating a pure and superior Aryan race, based on the principles of eugenics. Eugenics was a well-known theory in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, initiated by British anthropologist Francis Galton in 1883. The theory gained support from many politicians, including Hitler. Under Hitler's rule, eugenics was glorified by the Nazis and used as a tool to purify the race by eliminating groups deemed inferior. Hitler and Himmler promoted racial segregation, arguing that lesser races must make room for those considered superior. Since the 19th century, social Darwinism had become widespread, based on Darwin's theories of survival of the fittest and natural selection. It suggested that only the strong would survive, while the weak were destined for extinction. This struggle for survival was seen as the main driving force behind social evolution. For Hitler and Himmler, letting the strong triumph over the weak through natural processes was far too slow. Therefore, intervention was necessary to nurture a superior race, and that was the original goal of the Lebensborn, Fountain of Life project. They promoted this childbirth initiative under the pretense that it served the long-term interests of Germany and would help build a better future for humanity. Under Nazi indoctrination and propaganda, countless women willingly entered reproduction camps, even offering up their children voluntarily. First, the Lebensborn experimental camp recruited pregnant women from the general public. Once selected, these women were treated like princesses, receiving meticulous care. After giving birth, the children would remain at the facility to receive the best education. If the mother couldn't raise the child, the baby would be placed into the homes of high-ranking Nazi families. For a time, the Lebensborn program became a promised land for many unwed mothers. However, not all pregnant women were accepted. They had to pass strict screening, and the only criterion was racial purity. 3 generations of their family had to be free of any Jewish ancestry. This chart was used as the selection standard at the time. White dots represented Aryan bloodlines. Black dots represented Jewish heritage. The 5 categories included pure Aryan Germans, 1/4 Jewish, half Jewish, 3/4 Jewish, and pure Jews. Obviously, only pure Aryan Germans were eligible to participate in the Lebensborn project. However, very few women actually met the requirements. That's when the SS came up with a new idea. If there weren't enough pregnant women, why not select the most noble and racially pure German girls to become mothers? In 1936, Hildegard Trutz, an 18-year-old girl who had just graduated high school, with blonde hair, blue eyes, a tall figure, and long legs, quickly became a target of the SS. Still unsure of her future, the SS leadership told her, "If you don't yet know what you want to do with your life, why not bear a child for the Führer? We need girls like you to raise the value of our nation. Just look at your wide pelvis and hips. You're perfect for childbirth." Out of loyalty and love for the Reich and Hitler, Trutz immediately enrolled. In her group alone, there were hundreds of other beautiful, blonde-haired, blue-eyed girls who joined the Lebensborn program. They signed confidentiality agreements and told their families they were attending a state-run training course. They also agreed to hand over their children to the state. Later, under the guidance of staff, the girls were paired with Nazi officers in a massive, anonymously organized matchmaking operation. The girls were given 1 week to choose an officer they liked. Once doctors determined the ovulation dates, the selected couples were placed in private rooms, where they spent 3 nights together, dedicating themselves with patriotic passion to the Reich. If multiple girls liked the same officer, it didn't matter, their ovulation days would differ. 3 days later, that officer would visit other girls' rooms, with no one knowing each other's names. Behind all this intense passion was a single goal: reproduction. Once a girl became pregnant, the officer would leave the camp and return to the battlefield. Everyone in the camp was treated as breeding stock, while the children were viewed as mass-produced products, born continuously in a factory-like setting. 10 months later, Trutz gave birth to a beautiful Aryan boy, successfully completing her mission. She left the camp with pride, while her family remained unaware that she had secretly given birth outside of wedlock. Within the breeding camps, only healthy babies were allowed to survive. Malformed or weak infants were killed immediately. Some babies, though physically healthy, were subjected to treatment if their eye or hair color was too light and didn't meet the blonde hair, blue eyes standard. For example, strong lights might be shined into the eyes of infants, with the goal of stimulating development into future soldiers of the Reich. Himmler even personally created a high-protein nutritional formula for the children. When the babies cried, nurses were forbidden to comfort them, the reason being to forge mental toughness. Even if the babies screamed until their throats tore at in the 1930s, Himmler established 10 Lebensborn facilities in Germany. By the late 1930s, the program expanded into other countries considered to have racial value, such as Norway, Denmark, France, Belgium, and more. Between 1935 and 1945, a total of 36 Lebensborn facilities were established across Europe, producing over 8,000 Aryan children. Hitler's goal was to raise this number to 120 million by 1980. Clearly, the birth rate from the Lebensborn program could not satisfy the Nazi regime's ambitions. Every time the SS entered a new region, they would select children they deemed Aryan, even going so far as to snatch infants directly from their mother's arms. For a time, having blonde hair and blue eyes almost became a curse in Europe. Hitler believed that these elite Aryan children must serve the Reich. The kidnapped children had to undergo initial medical identification, including checks on eye color and hair color, before being sent to a Lebensborn center in Germany. There, they faced a final judgment over their fate. After a series of tests, the children were labeled as excellent, acceptable, or unfit. Those deemed unfit faced only one outcome: the gas chambers and concentration camps. In 1942, after German forces invaded Crimea, a boy with angelic blonde hair and blue eyes caught the Nazis' attention in a crowd. His name was Alexander Littow. Believing such a perfect child could not be left in Crimea, he was taken to Germany, forbidden from speaking his native language, and constantly told by staff that his parents had abandoned him. Eventually, Alexander was adopted by a wealthy German family and renamed Volker Heineck. According to incomplete statistics, up to 250,000 children were kidnapped by the German army, though only a small fraction survived. Cases like Alexander's were exceedingly rare. The story doesn't end there. In order to speed up the production of Aryan children, the Third Reich's military physician, nicknamed the Angel of Death, Joseph Mengele, expanded the Lebensborn Foundation into what he called the twin experiments. He reasoned that one twin birth was more efficient than a single birth. Mengele's theory was, humans and dogs share the same origins. If we can breed good dogs in a lab, then we can also breed good humans. In the 1940s, Mengele relocated to the infamous Auschwitz concentration camp, which became the main battleground for his twisted twin experiments. According to records, Mengele experimented on 1,500 pairs of twins, with fewer than 100 pairs surviving in the end. He was a thin man, obsessed with cleanliness and likely suffering from obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD. His hair was always perfectly combed, his dark green uniform impeccably pressed, and his shoes polished to a shine. This pursuit of perfection was also imposed on his test subjects. Any child with minor health issues, skin imperfections, or even a past appendectomy would be cruelly sent to the gas chamber. Among the rare survivors of Mengele's experiments were twin sisters Eva, Moses Kor, and Miriam, Moses Zeiger. They were born in Ports, a small village in central Romania, into a Jewish family with 4 daughters. Eva and Miriam had 2 older sisters. Their peaceful and happy life ended when the Nazis invaded their village. As the only Jewish family there, all 6 members were forced onto a train to the concentration camp. Upon arrival, SS officers immediately noticed Eva and Miriam and their mother holding their hands. Excitedly, the officers shouted, "Look, a pair of twins!" And the girls were instantly taken to the human experimentation lab. Their mother wept bitterly, but could not stop them from being taken. On the day the twins were taken to the lab, they did not know their mother and two older sisters had already been sent to the gas chambers. Mengel's twin genetics experiments aimed to study similarities and differences in the genetic makeup of twins and explore ways to artificially increase twin birth rates. Eva later recalled that she and Miriam were taken to a lab every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. There, they were stripped of their clothes and Mengel, along with his assistants, would examine and compare every part of their bodies. Every similarity and difference on every inch of skin was carefully documented. Each session lasting up to 8 hours, on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. They were taken to another lab for blood tests and were injected with massive doses of medication. Eva often passed out due to excessive blood loss. Once, after being injected, her limbs swelled, red rashes covered her body, and she developed a persistent high fever. She was sent to the camp hospital, where the doctor told her it was unfortunate, but a child this small would likely not survive another 2 weeks. At that moment, Eva had only one belief in her mind. She could not die there. She must survive to be reunited with her twin sister, and live. 2 weeks later, Eva's fever subsided. She had miraculously survived, and was once again sent back to Mengel's twin experiment camp. But when she reunited with her twin sister Miriam, Miriam had already been tormented beyond recognition. She lay motionless in bed. When Eva asked, "What happened during those 2 weeks I wasn't here?" Miriam replied, "I won't tell you and you wouldn't want to know." Compared to many other cases in Mengel's twin experiment camp, Eva and Miriam were still considered lucky. At least they survived in 1945 when World War II ended. Less than 100 trembling, terrified twin pairs emerged from the human experimentation camp. The German troops had vanished and Eva and Miriam were rescued and later moved to Israel in 1960. Eva married an American man and emigrated to the United States, while her only twin sister remained in Israel, where she also married and started her own family. When Miriam gave birth to her first child, her kidneys became infected, and no antibiotics seemed to help. In 1963, while pregnant with her second child, her kidneys again suffered a severe infection. When doctors examined her kidneys, they discovered they were the size of those of a young teenager. This meant her kidneys had stopped developing since the torturous time in the concentration camp. By the time she had her third child, her kidneys had completely failed. Without hesitation, Eva donated one of her kidneys to Miriam. Eva said, "I have 2 kidneys, but I only have one sister left. That decision wasn't hard for me at all." However, even after the transplant, Miriam's body continued to deteriorate over the years. Multiple organs began to degenerate, and she had to rely on medication just to survive. Her primary doctor tried to locate records of the experiments performed at the camp to determine what substances she had been injected with, but unfortunately, those documents were long gone. In June 1993, Miriam passed away. Afterward, Eva began giving lectures worldwide to find other twin survivors of the experimental camp. Thanks to her efforts, the world came to better understand that dark chapter in history. Eva passed away in July 2019, at the age of 85. So what happened to the Aryan children from the Lebensborn program? After World War II, the entire plan disintegrated. When US troops entered Germany, only about 100 Aryan children, aged 6 months to 6 years, were found. The staff responsible had long fled after sensing the tides turning. Those children, once hailed as the light of Germany, became the shame of humanity, scorned and ostracized by the public. The Nazis had believed Norwegians were descendants of the Vikings and possessed the most perfect bloodline. As a result, the largest Lebensborn camp outside Germany was in Norway. After the Germans retreated, the new Norwegian government took out their years of built-up resentment on these women and children. Many Norwegian women who had relations with German soldiers had their heads shaved, were stripped naked, and paraded through the streets in shame. Some Norwegian officials even openly declared, "We can't believe these Nazi children will become good citizens. Better to trust rats as pets." One even said, "The German gene is no better than that of the mentally ill." Ironically, these comments echoed Nazi ideology themselves. They failed to realize that they were victims of a brutal dictatorship, just like those children. The real issue was the regime and its operators, not its innocent victims. Many children born under the Lebensborn program were institutionalized in mental hospitals. A local pastor even suggested that these children's skin be regularly washed and disinfected to remove the Nazi smell. Some children were scrubbed so harshly that their skin ulcerated. In 2018, during the 70th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Norwegian Prime Minister Erna Solberg formally apologized on behalf of the nation to the Norwegian women and their German-born children who suffered unjust treatment. But apologies alone could not make up for the trauma and psychological scars. Investigations show that the suicide rate among Lebensborn children is much higher than among ordinary Germans. Those truly deserving of condemnation and punishment are Hitler, the Nazi regime, the SS, and its masterminds, not the innocent children. As Paul Hansen, a child born of the Lebensborn program, once said, "I will never be free from this shame. I wish my ashes could scatter in the wind, so I will never be chosen again." So, did Nazi Germany achieve any real scientific breakthroughs from the Lebensborn and twin experiments? Let's return to the so-called twin town mentioned earlier in the story. Residents there, as pointed out by an Argentine historian, lived in fear of being part of a Nazi racial experiment. They could not believe that they might be the outcome of a deadly study. Later, a team of Brazilian scientists conducted a detailed investigation into twin birth rates and baptism records in the town's history. The first major spike in twin baptisms appeared in 1927, and in the years that followed, twin births remained high, even though Nazi activity in Brazil didn't begin until much later. This indicates that the town's high twin rate had nothing to do with Mengel's experiments. The SS operated unchecked for years, and countless innocent lives were lost. Yet they never managed to create the superior race they sought. Perhaps that's a fate that can never be altered. Hitler, his crimes, and the mysteries surrounding him remain a dark enigma. What's even more disturbing is that there are still people who idolize figures like Hitler and Stalin, regarded globally as butchers of humanity, and see them as geniuses. It seems history remains elusive, or maybe history has simply been manipulated by those in power. And speaking of Hitler, do you think that for someone with such grand ambition and rumored contact with extraterrestrials, he could have died in such a simple and uneventful way? Feel free to share your thoughts on the Lebensborn program and your theories about Hitler's whereabouts in the comments below the video. That's all for today's story. Thank you for watching, and if you found this video meaningful, please share it with a friend. Thank you so much. Goodbye, and see you again soon.